Hello, Steve from YOUvolution Learning. It's been a while since I've done a video. I thought I'd put a bit of a bonus video together to cover the Advanced Synoptic Examiner's report and how you can access this if you don't know where to find it, and why and how you should be using this as part of your revision period. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so whichever browser you use, go over to your browser and search for aat.org.uk. So what you need to do is log into your My AAT account, which you should have already and have probably been using quite a bit anyway. So as you can see, just enter your email and then enter your password and then just log into the AAT. Okay, so once you're logged in, your screen may look a little bit different from mine because mine's from a tutor perspective, but the principle is the same. You want to head over to Study Support Search. And then once you're in there, AAT Accounting Qualifications 2016, Advanced Diploma in Accounting Level 3. And then we're going to scroll down and it's the Advanced Diploma Synoptic Assessment. That's the one that we're looking for. So there's all lots of different resources in here. We're looking specifically for the examiner's report. So just take our time just to scroll down and we can find it's here at the bottom. And then just click as PDF. So just click on that and you should open up as a PDF. So the examiner's report then, what is it? Every single year, the AAT bring out examiner's reports for all of their exams. Now these are where the examiner, they collect the data, they review all that data, and they spend the time looking through that and looking at performance. Where are students really doing well, but where are students not doing so well? And then the examiner takes a look at, well, why are students not doing so well? What can they find that identifies the areas where students are struggling? And what they do is they pull this report together, and then around about September time each year, they release these out to us all, and they're there for us to have a look at. Now, I find these to be extremely useful, especially when you're teaching these units to students. It's kind of like having an insider's view of what is actually going on in the exams and how students are performing in these exams. So then when you are teaching students, these are fantastic to be able to say, you know, look, in task 1 or task 2, this is where students are struggling. And then here are some tips, techniques, methods, etc., to ensure that you're not going to be one of those students who struggle in this area of the exam. So one of the things that I do when I first look at these is I scroll down, have a quick read about obviously what the report is about and stuff like that. But the area that I go straight to is this area here. So I'll just make that just a little bit bigger. So it's nice and easy to see on the screen. So what I do first of all is I look at this graph and then I look at where are the best performing tasks and where are the worst performing tasks. And the way to look at it is just look at the key at the bottom here. You've got exceeded and met. So you've got the dark green and the not as dark green. So it's kind of like these two here. These are the two that students are passing. So if they get exceeded and met, they pass the question. So I generally just with my mouse or my finger, or if I print it off with a pen, I literally just draw a line and go, okay, so almost 90% of students are passing task 1.1. Fantastic, that's an area where students do really well. And then it drops down to task 1.2, where just over 70% of students are passing that one. And then you can see task 1.3, boom, it drops all the way to around about 40%. So you can see that this is where students are doing really well. So great, let's keep students doing really well in that one. But this is where students are really struggling, you can see. And then it goes up to just under 60% for task 2.1, which is the first Excel task. And then again, drops down for task 2.2 in Excel to around about 50%. So my advice to you as a student is when you're looking at this, obviously, take note of what students are doing well in this task and make sure that you're doing the same thing. But I would advise, as part of your revision, go straight to the worst performing task, task 1.3, and take a bit more of a detailed look as to what exactly students are doing in that exam that's creating this really poor result of only 40% of students passing. So I just scroll down, so it's in task order, as you can see, 1.1, 1.2. So what I'll do is I'll just go straight to task 1.3, and I'll have a look around this and just go, okay, so I'll have a read through what is it that students are doing in here. So at the top, this part here, it literally just gives you a little bit about what that task is actually covering. So task 1.3, it assesses the knowledge of the application of ethical and accounting principles when preparing final accounts for different types of organization, and how to develop ethical courses of action, and how to communicate relevant information effectively. So that's what that task covers. So when you're doing your revision, break that down into its little parts. The knowledge of application of ethical and accounting principles. So you need to make sure that you've got knowledge of the application of ethical principles, and you need to make sure that you've got knowledge on the ethical principles of the knowledge of application of accounting principles. So break that first paragraph down, that first sentence down into those key areas, and make sure that you are okay on those areas. If you're not, make sure that they're part of your revision process. It just gives a bit of feedback here. This is an open response task and requires students to type in their own responses. So this is what's known as a written task in the AAT world, and historically, written tasks were only in level 4. And within level 4, they are some of the worst performing tasks in pretty much all of those exams. And we've seen something similar when they've introduced written tasks into level 2 and into level 3 as well. We're seeing a similar sort of performance issue with students being able to be successful in these written tasks. And it says, so this task is marked externally by the AAT. So a person will actually mark this task. And there are no marks awarded for communication skills. So they're not being marked on your grammar, your punctuation, your spelling. But as it says here, it is important that written responses are clearly worded, and the email should be written in such a manner as to be understood by a non-expert. Okay, so one of the things I advised in my ebook that I put together for this, which I'll put a link down below for you to access that, which goes through some of these tricky areas. What are the top 5 areas where students struggle in this exam? And I just give my top tips on how to overcome those. So if you want to get access to the ebook, click on the link below in the description of the video, and you'll be able to get access to that really good and useful ebook on this area. Anyway, back to what we're talking about here. So one of the things I would advise is when you are putting your written question together as part of your revision, read it back to yourself, but read it out aloud. What I find myself is if you read stuff in your head, you can sometimes misread stuff, or you read it in a way that makes it clear to understand. But when you read it out loud and you actually hear what it is that you've written, you can then start to see how it might not make sense or how it's not quite clear enough. So just make sure that when you are revising and you are practicing these written tasks, which you make sure you absolutely do, read it back to yourself, or even get somebody else to read it to you. So you can actually hear how it sounds and make adjustments. And especially in the exam itself, read it back to yourself. Obviously, in the exam situation, you can't read it out loud because obviously it'll disturb everybody else. But make sure you're reading it back to yourself and you're thinking, does that actually make sense? If it doesn't make sense to you, it certainly won't make sense to the examiner when they read it and try and mark it for you as well. Okay, so what I do then is obviously read that first bit and start to get an idea of where students are generally struggling, and then I jump straight to these weaknesses here. Now, the reason why I jump straight to the weaknesses, it's not to be negative, it's to say, right, okay, if this is where students are struggling, this is where students need to make sure that they are really recapping and revising and practicing in their revision stage. So let's take a look then at what's going on here. So the weaknesses are description of sustainability. Okay, so as part of your revision, make sure that you can describe what sustainability is. Make sure that you're able to describe it to people, your friends and family and things like that. Make sure that you can describe it in a way that they understand. Okay, so that's a weakness. Students struggle to describe sustainability. They also struggle in the description of sustainability in the context of identifying non-financial measures of sustainability and the actions to take to improve sustainability. So all in all, it's that overall area of sustainability. Now, if you still have access to your level 2 resources, if you go to working effectively in finance on your level 2 resources, you'll see on the e-learning there that there's e-learning on sustainability. So get yourself back onto that, get yourself making sure you're okay with what sustainability is, and that you can actually describe what sustainability is, what the non-financial measures of this sustainability is, and also what type of actions you can take to improve sustainability. There's also a description of the partnership agreement, the appropriation accounts, and the current and capital accounts. So again, as part of your revision, this is from FAPR, so final accounts preparation. That's what it's all about, sole traders and partnerships. So make sure that you are recapping on the knowledge on that unit, describing what the partnership agreement is, why is it in place, what are the features of it, making sure you know and understand and be able to describe what an appropriation account is and why that's being used. And the same with capital and current accounts as well, making sure that you know what they are and you can describe them. And these are great to write on flashcards, just like a definition. And again, speak to people, speak to your friends, speak to your family, and explain to them, if you can get people who are from the non-accounting world to understand what these things are, then you're on the right track. You can do that when it comes to the exam as well. So it also mentions in there about the importance, demonstrating the importance of the accounting equation, which is in both advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep, and the link between the financial statements as well. So again, recapping in those knowledge areas of advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep. And then the final two here is inefficient detail when describing a sole trader, partnership, or limited company. So again, when you are describing what a sole trader is, a partnership, or a limited company, making sure that you're including the description and the features of each of those, but not just the features of what a sole trader is, but some of the areas that differentiate them from the others. So why is a sole trader different from a partnership? Why is a partnership different from a limited company, and vice versa? Making sure that you when you are doing that description, you understand the similarities and the differences as well. And then finally here, insufficient detail when describing the financial statements. So at level 3, that is the statement of profit and loss and the statement of financial position. So again, making sure you can describe what those financial statements are, and that means including the features of those as well. What is the layout? What's included in them? Why are they used? Is there any differences for a limited company and a partnership and a sole trader? As you know, a sole trader and a partnership, there are differences in the statement of financial position, and there are also differences between the statement of profit and loss and the statement of financial position from a limited company perspective as well than there is to sole traders and partnerships. So think about the types of financial reporting standards, the international financial reporting standards, and the company's house requirements and things like that. So those are the areas that you need to make sure that you're picking up on. So you can see straight away, looking at those weaknesses, it gives you a really good idea of where students are falling short when it comes to answering this task. And none of those areas are out of anybody's reach, especially not your reach. You've just got to know that those are areas that you've got to make sure that you are included in your revision process, especially when you're practicing these tasks. Okay. And then a final note just on task 3, on task 1.3, and this comes up an awful lot in the examiner's reports. Care should be taken to read the question fully and answer any points raised in the memo or email section of the task. And it says that bullet points are a good way of structuring the written answers and enable the marker to see that all issues have been addressed. Now, when you look at the practice assessments within the AAT, there's this area called SAMS. So I'll just take you back to the study support and I'll just show you where that is. So you can see here you've got these things called SAMS. This is the sample assessment and mark scheme. Now, when you're looking at this, you go to task 3, task 1.3, have a look at the question and then have a look at the mark scheme, and it shows you the structure and the way that that's put together, and also how to make sure that you're actually answering what the question is asking for. I think from memory in that question, I think they're asking, in terms of ethics, they're asking you to identify which fundamental principles are in breach or are being threatened, and what are the threats that are actually in place, and then it asks you for some sort of solution. How can you reduce or remove those threats to those ethical fundamental principles? So one of the things that students forget is that it's asking for 3 things there. It's asking for what are the principles that are in threat, what are the threats to those principles, and what is a remedy, what is a solution. So that's 3 parts. So when you're putting your answer together, make sure that you are identifying those principles that have been threats, state what the threats are and why, and then come up with what you think could be a solution to try and reduce and remove those threats. Okay, so that's 3 areas, and if you don't cover all 3, you're not going to get the marks for all 3. Okay, so just going back to the examiner's report, then obviously we've looked at those weaknesses, and that helps us to identify where, as part of our revision, where we need to focus. And then we've obviously got the strengths as well. So again, making sure that you know what those strengths are, but don't fall in the trap to think, well, you don't need to revise those because people do well in those areas. As with the weaknesses, make sure that you're looking at those strengths and you're saying to yourself, okay, so these are things that are covered in the task. I need to make sure that they're my strengths as well. So I need to make sure they're part of my revision. Okay, so that's what I would generally do with an examiner's report, and that's what I advise students to do as well. You know where to find it, have a look at it, go straight to the very beginning, have a look at where students are performing well and they're not, take a look at the poor performing areas, and then start to think to yourself, right, okay, so these are where students are struggling. When I'm looking at my revision plan for these next few weeks, am I including those areas? And am I making sure I absolutely know what I need to do? You know, for sustainability, can I explain what a sole trader is, a limited company, what are the differences, the features? So those are the areas that you need to make sure you are absolutely covering. Okay, so before I finish the video, I wanted to be a short video just to show you how to access these and how to use these things. I'm just going to go back up to the top here. I'll show you. Sorry about the scrolling up and down if it's making you feel a bit dizzy. So I'm just going to go to task 2.2 because, as you see, out of the 2 spreadsheet tasks, this is the one that's where students do struggle more. There's a few reasons for this. It could be that students, as it says, students are spending more time in this one than they should be, so therefore they have less time to spend in this one than they should do. But it depends on your approach. You know, are you doing everything you can to get that one done in task 2.1, and then leaving yourself short, and then rushing a little bit and panicking a little bit? You've got to get everything uploaded and things. And so there's a few different reasons, but surprisingly, there's a few areas in this one that causes students to struggle, that aren't to do with time, that aren't to do with the fact that it's the last question, so people are trying to rush to get, students are trying to rush to get that question done. There are some really key concepts in this question that are the real cause as to why students struggle in this task. So I'm going to go to task 2.2 and I'll show you some of the areas where students struggle, and again, I'll give you some hints and tips in terms of how you can try and overcome those during your revision stage. So again, excuse the scrolling up and down, just close your eyes if it's making you feel a bit dizzy. So yeah, here we go. So task 2.2. So I'll do a similar sort of thing I did with task 1.3. I'll go through it in a bit of detail and give you some of my thoughts on this as well. So as before, the first part tells you what the task is covering. So it says this task assesses the ability to prepare financial accounting information comprising extended trial balances and final accounts for sole traders and partnerships using spreadsheets. And this task is externally marked by the AAT. So there's a few things there to really pick out on. It's covered. Task 2.2 is where advanced bookkeeping and final accounts preparation are going to be tested from the aspect of spreadsheets. Okay, and then it says students seem to find this task challenging. Only 50% of students achieve the minimum requirement, and nearly 20% of students were significantly below the minimum requirement, which is really high. And there is evidence that some students completed only the subtasks which attracted the most marks. That's really bizarre because there are aspects in the task such as formatting which are really straightforward to do that students aren't doing because they don't provide them with the most marks in terms of the overall marks, which is a bit of an odd thing. But again, is it down to exam technique? Are people being advised that should be the way forward? I'm not quite sure. That's probably, if that's the case, whether that's good advice. And it says there is evidence that some students completed only the subtasks we've just covered, which attracted the most marks, such as the construction of the financial statements from the extended trial balance. It says students spend an average of 45 minutes on this task, which would indicate that they would benefit from spending more time on this task in relation to task 2.1. Students should be mindful that part 2 task weightings are not equal. Therefore, the overall allocated time allowance should not be divided equal between task 2.1 and task 2.2. Because if the weighting isn't the same, don't think that you need to spend 40 or 45 minutes on, or whatever it is, 35 minutes on that task and the same on that task. Have a look at the weighting, which you can find from the advanced, try and get the wording of this right, the advanced diploma qualification specification. In there, it tells you the weighting of the different areas of the different tasks, really. So make sure you know how much time you really should be spending on task 2.1 or 2.2. So in terms of weaknesses then, so you'd expect there are areas of spreadsheets here. And again, these are fantastic because it then says, as part of your revision, you need to make sure you're able to do this and practicing this. So the first one is inserting a linear forecast trend line. So when you are doing your charts, make sure you know where to go in the obviously the ribbon up at the top. When you're looking at charts, you know how to add that forecast trend line in. Formatting the chart to a specific size. And again, make sure you know how to grow and shrink the chart to make sure it fits as to where it's supposed to. But then we then start to lose areas of spreadsheets here, and we start to talk about other areas which you may find surprising when you're looking at, well, are people struggling in the spreadsheets task because they can't do spreadsheets? And you'll see in a second now that students aren't struggling in these spreadsheets tasks because they can't do spreadsheets. They're struggling because they struggle with the concepts of accounting from advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep. So bullet point number 4 there. I know I've missed number 3, which is failing to follow tasks, which we spoke about earlier on. But yeah, bullet point 4, lack of accounting knowledge regarding opening and closing inventory in the extended trial balance. So that's accounting concept understanding, not spreadsheet understanding. So making sure that you're going back over your advanced bookkeeping notes and that you know where closing inventory appears in the extended trial balance. As you know, it goes on both. It goes in the profit and loss, and it goes on the statement of financial position, because it's part of the cost of goods sold calculation on our profit and loss, but it's part of our current assets on our statement of financial position as well. So it says there, closing inventory, extended trial balance. In the statement of profit and loss columns, there needs to be a figure for open inventory and a figure for closing inventory, whilst the closing inventory is also recorded in the statement of financial position. So the examiner there is actually giving you the answers. They're saying that when it comes to opening and closing inventory, this is what it needs to be. So therefore you should make sure that you understand that. And then bullet point 5, it says lack of accounting knowledge, again, when constructing a statement of financial position for either a sole trader or a partnership. So remember that the partnership statement of financial position, the bottom part of that where we demonstrate the capital and profit and drawings and stuff like that, that's different because it just combines everything. You've got the capital for the partners and the different partners, and then you've got the current account, and in the current account it includes the profit and the drawings and all those other calculations as well. Okay, so maybe you found that surprising. When I first read this, I certainly found that surprising, that when it comes to the weaknesses on a spreadsheet task, it's not really spreadsheets, it's that fundamental accounting knowledge that you did in advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep, and that's why students are struggling in this spreadsheet task, is because of that. So when you are doing your revision and you are looking at revising advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep, make sure you are speaking to your college or training provider and you're asking them to provide you with resources. Providing you with resources that allow you to test those accounting concepts in the concept of spreadsheets as well. So just at the bottom of task 2.2 then, it just says students are required to demonstrate good accounting knowledge of preparing final accounts for this task. As in task 2.1, knowledge of spreadsheet functionality is key to making good use of the spreadsheet to construct the extended trial balance and the corresponding financial statements. The financial statements should be referenced to the appropriate columns in the extended trial balance. using direct referencing, so that if any subsequent changes are made to the figures in the ETB, the extended trial balance, they automatically update in the financial statements. Okay, so yeah, so like I was saying, it is absolutely crucial that you know your stuff in Excel. But in order for you to be able to do that, you need to really know your stuff when it comes to accounting as well. So at the end, this bit here then, just before we get into the conclusion, it says the lack of spreadsheet knowledge is evident when considering the use of data validation, conditional formatting, and formatting charts. So again, as part of your revision, validation, conditional formatting, and formatting charts. Students should ensure that they take the time to read and follow the task instructions, as marks were lost by not applying all formatting required. Now, when spreadsheets used to be its own standalone exam before AQ 2016, I used to teach that to students, and it was one of my favorite subjects. I really like spreadsheets. It's one of my favorite tools when I used to work in industry. And again, whilst I've been a tutor, I managed to create some really cool dashboards and stuff so I can track student performance. Now, when I used to teach that course, and we used to manually mark those ourselves to see how students do, and it was quite frustrating to see that although everybody passed, everybody passed those, there were students who almost failed because they didn't do the formatting part of the task for whatever reason. They just worked their way through and then forgot to make something bold, or they forgot to put a border around something, or they forgot to make something a different color or a different font size or whatever it was. So when you are working through these tasks, what I would advise you do is literally make a quick note of what you need to do on your piece of paper and then tick them off as you're going along to make sure that you've got them all done. And it will only take you an extra few seconds to do that, but it's well worth it because you're still accumulating marks for those really simple parts of the formatting side of things. So as it says there, marks were lost by not applying formatting, and that's a really sad area to lose marks because they're not the difficult marks to gain. Being able to do if statements and VLOOKUPs and stuff like that, that's where the difficulty lies in these sort of things, and the formatting isn't. And being able to do the formatting doesn't rely on being able to do the more trickier areas. You can still carry out the formatting and you'll still pick up the marks for that. So one of the ways to see exactly how the spreadsheet side is marked, go back to the SAMs I was saying here, have a look at the mark scheme for spreadsheets and it will show you exactly where the marks are being picked up on. So again, knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you're aware of what you need to do in these tasks, the easier it will be for you to make sure you are picking up those vital marks. And from my experience, the difference between a met and a borderline can be as little as 2 marks. And that's the difference between passing and failing. So, picking up those extra couple of marks throughout by carrying out those formatting side of things, they're really important. And like I said, they can be the difference between you getting 68% and getting 72%. One's a fail, one's a pass. So don't underestimate the power of those little marks, those formatting marks. So at the end of it, there's a conclusion as well, which I'm not going to read through all this. I've taken up enough of your time already. It was supposed to only be a short video, but as usual, I just carry on talking. So have a read of the conclusion. Again, it just goes through part 1. It talks about things in general as well. So make sure that you have a good read of this. And just quick go through this first part, then I'll leave it there. So the revision, it says the written task 1.3, caused students the most problems. As we've seen, it is the worst performing task. So although 5% of students were significantly below the requirement, it was 55% of students who were either borderline, and remember what I said about borderline, around about 2 marks or so can be the difference between borderline and met. So students are getting there, they just need that little bit extra to push them over. And reading the examiner's report and identifying those key areas where students are struggling, they can be the difference between you being part of that borderline stat or being part of that met stat. Okay, so again, so don't underestimate the power of knowing where students struggle and making sure you build that into your revision plan as well. So again, it says brought down the overall result. So this was due to a combination of lack of knowledge, but we've dealt with that, haven't we? We've looked at where that lack of knowledge is. So you guys are gonna, after watching this video, you know exactly where you need to improve on that knowledge. So you're not gonna be part of that borderline stat. And that inability to express their answers clearly. Now, the only way you're going to get better at expressing your answers clearly is by making sure you're practicing as many of these written tasks as possible. So obviously you've got the practice assessments, you've got the sample and mark series, you've got in your like Osborne, Kaplan, BPP, who you know, First Intuition, ICS, whoever it is that you're using, you've got their practice assessments as well. But don't forget, go back to your unit exams, textbooks, and your question banks, and within there will also be the opportunity to put written tasks together. Now, students can find that they will work through the calculation and accounting tasks. I'm happy to do that, and really either just glimp over or just quickly go through the written tasks and not really put a lot of effort into them. So as part of your revision, go back to those unit question banks, or advanced bookkeeping, finance, accounts prep, management, accounting, costing. Make sure you're going back to those and practicing those written questions as much as you can. That's how you're going to get better at, you know, expressing your answers clearly. And if you are with a college, or you're with a private training provider, or even if you're distance learning, if you're getting tutor support, get those written questions sent over to your tutors and get them to mark them for you and get that feedback from them. Is it clear? Is it hitting the points? How do I improve? You know, make the most of the tutor support that you've got. All right, so that's going to bring us to the end of this video. So I just wanted to say to you, I hope you've enjoyed this one as usual. It's helped you in looking at another resource that can help you in your revision. But don't forget, down below in the comments, not in the comments, in the description, I've put in there the link for the top 5 areas students struggle ebook and my top tips on how to overcome those. And don't forget, I have put this effective revision techniques course together, where some of the things we spoke about here today are going in a bit more detail on how to really effectively put your revision plan together and target these areas that you need to work on. So be sure to check it out. Like I said, it's only £27. Be sure to check that out. Have a look through. If you have any questions, there is a space on the course page for you to send me some comments, and I'll be happy to feed back to you, you know, answer any questions that you might have as well. All right, so take care, guys. Make the most of these next few weeks in the run up to your Advanced Synoptic, and let's make this Advanced Synoptic the best one ever. Let's make sure we're all preparing properly. You've got the likes of myself, who's you know, dots around on the Facebook groups. You've also got access to my YouTube channel and my website as well. So make sure, if you've got any questions for me, send them over to me. I'll be happy to answer them the best I can. But don't forget to utilize the tutors that you're paying for. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you prepare and be successful in this exam. So, you know, make sure they've got wealth of experience, so make sure you're utilizing it. All right, guys. So until next time, I don't know when the next video will be. I think over the next few days, I'm going to put like a walkthrough video of my course. So, you know, those who are not too sure whether it might be right for them, I'm going to put a little walkthrough video together. Just so you can see what the course looks like. Obviously, I'm not going to show you the details, because obviously that's going to be hidden behind the payment of the course. But I will go through and just show you what it looks like, how to access it, and you know, obviously how you can use it. So you might find that useful. So next couple of days, look out for that one. Obviously, I'll put it on my YouTube channel, but I'll also share that with the Facebook groups as well. So obviously students can share it amongst themselves and have a look at it. All right, guys. So thanks a lot for bearing with me for this video. I know it's been longer than I anticipated it to be, but take care, and I wish you all the best for your revision for this really tough exam. And it's all about preparation. It's all about practice. All right, take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.